I spent 51 years in higher education. I was an employee at Purdue University, University of Kansas, and most recently I retired from Northwestern University. I spent 18 years there. I have a calling and a passion to help students at all level get more education. So I have worked at the undergraduate level. So if any of you have sons and daughters, nieces and nephews, you name it, and they're interested in help with undergraduate admissions, or you're interested in undergraduate admissions, I help with that. I have worked in veterinary school admissions, pharmacy admissions, and then my last 18 years were at Northwestern University as Assistant Dean for Graduate Studies in the Engineering School. You may or may not know that computer science, for example, is either in an engineering school or it could be in a school of arts and sciences. At Northwestern, I was fortunate that our computer science program was in the engineering school. My role at Northwestern was to recruit students. I oversaw admissions, and then I was responsible for the well-being of 1,100 PhD students and almost 600 master's students. So again, I'm passionate about helping. I look forward to questions today. And then I would add, most importantly, I am very, very involved in LinkedIn. That was in the announcement that Dave made, but I have over 21,000 followers in LinkedIn. I work in LinkedIn every day and I work one on one with anybody with the need for assistance in undergraduate, graduate admissions. And again, I'm passionate about this. I do not charge anything. I Zoom with students, I email, so I'm available to help not only today and answer your questions, but down the road if you want to connect and work with me. So, Dave, that's my introduction for everyone.
I like it. I approve, man. Awesome. And actually to that note, I just dropped your LinkedIn profile URL into the chat. So if there's anybody here that hasn't connected with Bruce and you'd like to, you're just a couple of clicks away from that. Um, the first question I had was, or after introductions, was just from your perspective, how has the path into engineering and technical fields changed over the last decade?
Well, I've been, as you know, in higher education for 50 years, and I would say that the interest in all STEM fields, especially engineering, has increased. So, in some respects, that's probably made it more competitive to get into undergraduate study as well as graduate study. It's not impossible, but it's become more popular. More people are applying, and then the enrollments in those areas have certainly increased over the last decade.
Any thoughts on what's caused that increase or that trajectory?
Well, I think the job market as much as anything, and there's a shortage, especially at the graduate level, of U.S. students going to graduate school. I'm going to say this now. It may shock people, but it's accurate information. 70% of the master's and PhD students in U.S. engineering schools are not from the United States. U.S. students get a bachelor's degree, especially in engineering. They think about how much money they're going to make and they leave school and they get a lucrative job offer and they start working. Going back to graduate school once they start working becomes more and more difficult the longer they work. So I think the United States has really put more emphasis on education in the STEM field, so that has grown.
Okay. And do you think, and that's just my own curiosity for how it has been that way, where US citizens would be quicker to go into the workforce? And do you think it's a kind of a cultural sort of thing and just the society we have?
I think students focus on material things. I want to get a new car. I don't want to live in a residence hall anymore. I want a different lifestyle. And it's really hard. We at Northwestern we had a BSMS program. So students could start the master's degree before they finished the bachelor's. And that program was almost non-existent when I started in 2006, and it grew from 5 students a year to 200 students a year. And my last year in 2023, we had 80 students at Northwestern finish their bachelor's and their master's in only 4 years. They came in with advanced placement credit and they were able to move quickly. And in those 4 years, they finished both of their degrees. So that worked. But to get U.S. students to think about another 5 years to get a PhD, I was never able to conquer that.
That was too high a hill to climb.
Well, they figured they'd be 80 years old by the time they'd get to that point, and they wanted to enjoy life.
Yeah. We actually we do have a comment or question. If you can see in the chat as well from Jack. Have you read that the U.S. government just removed degree requirements for IT positions?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Yeah. Jack, if you do know, and Jack, you're at USD, I believe. You can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, but if you can share how recently uh, that change took place, and we can give a minute to apply back. Uh,
Yeah, to be honest, I'm more on the admission side and student side, and there are other people that are much better experts on the employment side. So this is new to me. I was not aware of that.
no, that's fine. Now you have here. He said a news item this morning. However, they've been pushing the need for degrees when experience is taking over. So, um, now I did want to drop this link in the chat with everybody as well, which is the book that you wrote. And you had shared in full transparency, it's not a bestseller. Um, here. So that is the link. And the book is called Applying for Graduate Admissions to U.S. Engineering Schools. And if you can, just kind of share with people both what's in the book and how you've leveraged LinkedIn as a complement to it in trying to
Sure,
have a better outreach and everything.
sure. Well, when I retired, I'm still passionate about what I do, so I wasn't going to go out in a boat and fish all day long. So I I decided that I needed to put things in writing. It's a 50-page book. It is a quick read, and it's the foundation of what students need to know. Not only students, but high school counselors, parents. There's a lot of misunderstanding about graduate school, and I just laid a lot of things out. It's very similar to presentations that I do. And then what I've done is in LinkedIn, I have over 20 posts at any given time that really are updates to the book and the basic information. Students want to, send each other short messages, text messages. They don't want to take time to buy a book, read a book, although they can probably read the book in no more than an hour and a half. So I decided that if I was going to reach students, then what I needed to do is post in LinkedIn. So when students write to me, and they do all the time, and say, I want to apply for graduate admissions, help me. Well, that's like saying I'm in the middle of the ocean, I need an oar, help me. And I have no idea what their background is. So I try to get students to have a basic understanding, and then I can help them at a deeper level rather than go all the way back and try to teach them things that hopefully someone had taught them when they were an undergraduate student and said, I think I'm going to go to graduate school.
Yeah. And you had shared, sorry. Pardon me. You had shared that a lot of times, as much as you may be helping the student themselves, you may be helping their parents or the parents on behalf of the student, or maybe as a holistic family unit. I wanted to let you elaborate on that, but I did want to bring up the first poll question, just so we can kind of have an idea of. Why are you not like letting me? Hang on. Are you going to let me launch this? Yes. So how can I? Why are you not letting me launch you? Dang it. All right. Well, if that's going to be the case and if it's going to be stubborn, um, let me let me read the poll question to everybody. And what we were trying to identify from this. And if you would, please just post kind of your answer in the chat. And we can kind of see as they come in. But it is, are you attending this webinar for yourself or on behalf of someone else? And answers can be myself, a family member, a friend or an associate, or neither. Just curious, and kind of want to see what we've got. Looking pretty um pretty much folks for themselves. So fantastic. And thank you. Um if I pivot a little bit, um when you and I were talking, because I live in the world of ISACA and stuff where there's certifications and then there's degrees and with how fast things are changing, especially in the security realm. Um, just if you can share with folks your perspective of recommendations of a degree, recommendations of certifications, other internship, or just and I don't mean to make it be a one or another. Just more of a holistic what you've seen and what can be potentially valuable and in what scenarios.
Well, I think we all realize that AI is changing the world very quickly. And I can speak on the higher education side because that's been my background, that certainly universities are trying to introduce new undergraduate and graduate degree programs. I try to keep up with what goes on at Northwestern, for example, and Northwestern just introduced a new bachelor's degree in artificial intelligence through the computer science department. A few years ago, the Kellogg School of Management introduced an MBA program with a specialization in AI. Now, I've been on both the public university side and the private university side. Private universities can move more quickly. I worked in Indiana at Purdue. I worked in Kansas, and we had the Indiana Commission on Higher Education and the Kansas Board of Regents. So it's harder sometimes for a public university to introduce a new program and then move through the bureaucratic channels to get a new program approved. Um, I spoke Tuesday at Argonne National Lab. I have been doing that for 20 years. And one of the things I've always learned in life is to look at Argonne National Lab employees, look at companies, and look at the positions and what people do and what the requirements are. When I presented Tuesday, I told students, you're here working as an intern at Argonne National Lab. See what people do and then have conversations and say, I really, really admire the work you're doing. What's your educational background? So in some cases at Argonne National Lab or a major corporation, they're going to say, I have to have a PhD to do this. Someone else may say to do this work, I need a master's degree. I learned something this morning about the federal government, but a lot of times the entry level positions will require a bachelor's degree. In the IT world, I'm sure that there are people that have less than a bachelor's degree. They may have an associate degree. They may have certificates. They may have taught themselves a lot of things on their own. So I think you really look at the workforce and say, to get to that level, what am I going to need? And, I've worked in undergraduate admissions, graduate admissions, and, you know, sometimes students say, well, why would I want to do that? I'll be overqualified. And I guess my general reaction is I don't think you're ever going to be overqualified for more education, but sure, you're going to be overqualified if you have a PhD and you want to do an entry level position that requires only a bachelor's degree. So, yeah, it's a changing world, especially with AI, and all you can do is kind of monitor what's going on and what the requirements are going to be.
No, that's good. Thank you. And you kind of make my mind go off in a tangent in what you were describing, where the importance of that student or that person starting to identify what they want and having a more clear vision of, hey, I find what this department or this individual is doing, so you can then when you reach out to them, then the conversations can be more strategic to those objectives. Um, so that makes me kind of want to go off script. When you speak with students, how many of them do you, or like just roughly a percentage, are looking for more generalized insight from you, or have kind of figured out where they want to go and can be a little more specific?
It varies, but most of the students that come to me are pretty set on getting a graduate degree. And as we go along today, Dave, I'm going to explain some things here, kind of as a bonus in between here. PhD study, the first time I ever had a student say, I know the answer to this, I was working with students about the BSMS program. And when I saw someone who was just off the charts bright, I said, have you ever thought about a PhD? That was my standard question. It took me 4 years before I had a student who could say, I know, Bruce, that doesn't cost anything. PhDs don't cost anything. They may take 5 years, but they're fully funded. Master's degrees are very different. Most of them are not funded, some are partially funded. So by the time students get to me, they're probably undergraduate students who are thinking about graduate school. So, I've worked at three schools. I have no biases. I help a student apply wherever they want to apply. Earlier today, I worked with about 5 students and they didn't get in this year. I said, send me a list of where you applied and didn't get in. And then what you have to do is you have to figure out, okay, I had a student today who applied to Harvard. And when you have international students, they only think of the Ivy League schools and Stanford and whatever, and they simply don't have those credentials. I have parents, we talked about parents before, who reach out to me. I had a faculty member in India who reached out to me about her junior in high school looking at education outside of India. So I worked with them to help a high school student decide where he was going to apply to undergraduate admissions. I also have parents reach out to me about an undergraduate student who wants to go to graduate school. So the sky's the limit. I have never said to anyone, hey, I don't do that work. Um, I help students in a lot of different areas. Um, so anyone that's on this webinar today can always reach out to me and ask me anything, and I'll help in almost any way I possibly can.
No, I recognized your passion on this the first time we met, and it's infectious. It really is, and that's just I think honestly it's a huge compliment to you, who you are, and how you can help people out. Just again off script, on average, how many students do you help a year, do you think?
Probably 1,000 or more.
That many. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then I'm gonna go to the second poll question and we'll just do it again on through the chat. Hester had commented in the chat that when he worked at NASA, uh, it did require a bachelor's degree or higher. So just for anybody interested to kind of play that information forward. Um, to kind of understand who we've got here, the second question is, where are you presently in your career? And the options are not started yet, gearing up for school, the journey's going to be beginning, or that you've been in a job for 1 to 5 years, mid-careers 5 to 10, and or 10 plus. And um, yeah, Henrik, I know you, and I know you're hard at work. Can we get some feedback from some others? Okay, 10 plus, 10. We're not grading you. We just want to know. Okay, so most of who have replied are, further in their career. We've got somebody at 6 plus, so um, nice. Thank you all. And okay, um, gonna ask you this question, and then we can kind of pivot to what you were talking about having something above and beyond what were in some of the questions that I sent you, if you like. Um,
Sure.
because I know if you thought about it, then it's gonna have value. So the next question was, when you look at successful graduate school applicants, what qualities or patterns stand out that you've seen?
Well, I'm going to give you three examples here because at the graduate level, there's really three options. Some students will do a master's program courses only. Some students will do a master's degree plus research that may take 2 years. Courses only is typically a year. And then a PhD obviously is going to be courses a couple years and then a lot of research. So the students that get into graduate study obviously are going to be good students. Do you have to have a 4.0? No, that's silly. The average GPA of new PhD students is probably 3.6, 3.7. So the first thing is they have to be good students. Secondly, if they're doing a master's with research or a PhD, they need research experience. One of your questions ahead of time, Dave, was how do students get research? I've got a perfect example that I worked with this year. A young lady from Grinnell College in Iowa. Now, most people have said, I don't even know where Grinnell College is. I know nothing about it. The first conversation I had with her is, you have a problem, Joyce, because lots of people when you apply for PhD admission, are going to look at a school and say, gee, she's not from Stanford, she's not from MIT. What do we know about Grinnell? So if you're going to do research in a master's or PhD, you need to have a research background. Fortunately, she had been researching with someone at Grinnell for 4 years. Then she went out every summer because there are summer programs at major research universities where a person can get research experience. Students need strong letters of recommendation. I have seen letters that said I had Johnny in class. He had the highest grade in the class, and I gave him an A. That doesn't tell an admissions committee much of anything. If someone needs research in their graduate program, then they need someone who says, hey, they're a great students, they're a great researcher, they work well with other people in my lab group, etc. So, it's strong in academics, and for some students, it's a strong research background and strong letters of recommendation. And then this morning, I worked with a student who every graduate application has essays. And students want to sit back and write a standard essay and just upload it every place. But every application has specific questions, so you have to write to the prompts in that question. Uh, she had four things that she needed to share, and they said 1 to 2 pages, and she wrote 3 pages, and she threw everything in except for the kitchen sink. She did not focus on what they asked. So when students are applying for graduate admission, they really need to follow the instructions. She didn't get in this year, so I'm working with her now for 2027 to make sure that she does a better job. She's got a great record, great research experience, but she didn't do well by her applications.
That's interesting. Do you have any insight or thoughts or perspective that when a student is filling out those applications like that, if they're online, how much more now they're leveraging AI to?
I don't know. I've had some students this year write to me and say, is it okay to use AI? And I said, well, read the instructions. And I have not yet encountered one school who, in their instructions, says this has to be your own work, do not use AI. So I am sure that whether it's an undergraduate essay or a graduate school essay, that probably AI comes into play after a student has written something saying, I bet AI can make this better. So unless something appears on a website, I don't know how a university can, say, we know you used AI and you shouldn't have. So I'm sure it goes on.
Yeah, and I don't mean it as like a negative thing. I just more of a where the state of our society is and how it's become more readily available. What you said, it was read the instructions.
Yeah, we have had high school counselors, paid high school consultants, faculty members, people forever have been, editing and helping students with essays. So whether it's AI or a human being, it happens. I mean,
Hmm.
rich kids in the suburbs of San Diego or Chicago may have families that pay someone to help them with all their college applications. So it's been going on for a long time.
It's very true.
So
Very.
I can't imagine that a school is ever going to put on a website, you can't use AI to write your essays.
Yeah, and I think they, at least back when I was doing consulting before I got the role at the academy here, Um, there were some colleges in the Midwest that I would serve as uh, a VCSO, just a virtual chief information security officer. And this goes back, I don't know, 2 maybe 3 years ish. And it was at that time where they were really trying to figure out just initially, how do we even approach AI? And a lot of it was like you were saying, just I don't want to say follow the instructions, but understand what the North Star is. What is the objective that we're trying to get out of this? And then on the security side, it was obvious, well, there were two sides of it. If I go down a rabbit hole, there was the position to take with students and their options of it, but then there was the internal, from administration of how to use it, and it required a lot of awareness and a lot of education. Even just starting with knowing what you're putting in there and where, when you put that in there, where it can potentially go. Just foundational things like that. But yeah, you're kind of bringing back those memories of, just situational awareness, and then knowing, or having the discipline to do the right thing once you had it. Um, let me ask you this, or one of the questions I had was, parents often want to help, but don't always know how. What advice would you give parents who are supporting a student through the admissions or career planning process?
Well, one of the concerns I always have is there's so much focus with parents of high school students to try to get their student into the best school. Once they get in, they kind of wash their hands and say, we're done. Well, I don't care whether you're an undergraduate student or a graduate student. There are probably two keys. One is no one's going to sit down with you and tell you 100% of what you need to know. So whether you go into undergraduate education or graduate education, you have to ask questions. And you have to ask questions of the people who are the experts. I get too many students that ask another student and they get some of the worst information you can imagine. So I have to correct that. The other thing that comes up, you had a question about, um, the imposter syndrome and different things like that. Students should never be afraid to reach out for help. I always believed in higher education there were gaps. So students knew me well when I worked with almost 2,000 students in the engineering school. They knew they could come to me. They could share anything, and I was a good listener. My master's degree is in counseling. But sometimes it was a simple thing I could help them with, and other times they really had some deep seated issues. And I would have them go to psychological services. They were afraid of that. And I said, look, it's totally confidential, but don't get yourself to the point that you don't want to go on with life. And unfortunately, in my 51 years, I had two students that were in my circle that committed suicide. Student suicides are the extreme of where a student just doesn't reach out and get assistance. So, again, parents need to tell students, whether they're a graduate student or an undergrad, there are people there to help you. Reach out to those folks. And I was always the resource person with our graduate students. If I couldn't help them, I knew who could. So those are the two things, ask questions and seek the assistance that you need so you can stay on top of things and have really a good experience.
No, dude, thank you. And that transcends beyond our topic here. Just in life. We run into that a lot at work. Um, not as extreme as, someone taking their life, fortunately, but knowing that you don't exist in a vacuum, that there are others, and a lot of times, I mean, the academy I'm at is very small. um, staff wise. And we will, I will tell people early and often that none of us have all of the answers. But if you know that you're not in that vacuum and you reach out, you may not know the answer. I may not know the answer, but together we know enough that we can figure out what are the optimal next steps. And but it does take exactly what you were saying, that they need to take that first step so they can know that others are there for them. So that's huge, and I appreciate you bringing that up. If you like, we can kind of pivot with what you said that additionally that you had to share, just to, if you'd like, just to make sure we've got time for that for everybody.
And what do you want me to share, Dave?
I thought you said that you had something above and beyond what the questions were. Perhaps I heard
Well,
you.
I've got a lot of things I can share. There's no question about that. And, as I said earlier, this is a beginning. I'm willing to handle anything and everything today, but I don't want anyone to hesitate and say, well, I'm thinking about this or that. Write to me. There's just a lot of information I've had over the years helping parents, helping students. Probably one of the nice transitions I made when I worked at the undergraduate level, you had a lot of helicopter parents. So sometimes when a family came to visit in my first days at Purdue, the parents dominated the conversation. But at the graduate level, that was the difference. I didn't have that many conversations with parents, although I had a few, and they sometimes were tricky. But no, I'm going to look over all the questions you had before and see. And we've handled the essays, the letters of recommendation. One of the questions that you had was beyond rankings. And I would tell students that once you're admitted to programs, don't make a decision based only on rankings. At the PhD level, the master's level, there are often opportunities for students to visit campus and get an idea of, is this a good fit for me, even at the undergraduate level. It's always important to visit campuses and get a feel and say, do I feel comfortable? Is this where I belong? This school's not ranked as high as maybe another school. So I think it's really important. I have graduate students that have gotten really good. They are thinking about going to a particular school with a particular faculty member. They will actually go to the website and find faculty members and the students in the group, and then they will reach out to the students and say, what is Professor Lindvall like? I know you're in his PhD research group, but I want to know more about him. And most of the time, students are going to be very open. And when you visit campuses, look for opportunities to talk to people behind the scenes and not just the people on the surface. Go visit people in the academic area, talk to students. There's a lot that a person can learn beyond rankings. Rankings for me are just an idea of, some of the better programs in your field, but don't ever select someone because they rank number five and the other school was number seven.
Okay. No, that's great. Yeah, and I was just working through the questions. So, and I just wanted to make sure we had good stuff to talk on and share with everybody. And again, if anybody attending, if you've got questions that you want to go ahead and drop in the chat, please do. And yeah, you're in a safe space here, and would love to hear them. Until we do get some, we can look at the next section, which was funding scholarships and financial strategies. We haven't really touched on that much and would love to hear from you.
Well, as I was telling you earlier, Dave, I was on the GEM board of directors. GEM, GEM, is a fellowship program for both master's and PhD students. It's an organization of companies, about 60, and about 160 universities. Students apply for the GEM Fellowship at the master's level, for example. It's one of the best opportunities out there because a company selects a student, they get 2 summer interns, and then the university pays full tuition for 2 years, and GEM provides $8,000 per year. So if a person's going to be a full-time master's student, then the GEM Fellowship is at the top of the list. The Department of War, used to be the Department of Defense, has the SMART, SMART scholarship, and that will fund a master's degree program. At the PhD level, the National Science Foundation has the Graduate Research Fellowship. 2,500 of those were just awarded last week, and that pays for 3 years of PhD study. So for students who are thinking about PhD study like I did at Argonne on Tuesday, I said apply for that because there's not a huge difference between two PhD applicants. And funding is tighter right now with the federal government cutting back on funds for faculty members. NIH and NSF fund faculty grants to do research. But if a student can say, hey, I just found out I've got 3 years of funding, and the faculty member is sitting on the fence saying, I don't know whether my grant is going to be refunded. So if I have a student that can bring in 3 years of funding, I don't have to worry about that. So funding at the PhD level should be by the university, although NSF and other fellowships like NDSEG are great opportunities. Masters, not much funding unless you're doing research, and that's only going to be partial funding. And then you've got SMART and GEM. The other thing that I had in some of my notes, Dave, I want to bring up because I just saw something come up about COVID. One of the good things that happened in COVID, a lot of universities realized they could teach coursework online. So if you're working full time and you don't want to quit a job and go to school full time, there are several opportunities. In the greater Chicago area, for example, for someone who works, there are 3 engineering schools that have programs that are evening and weekend. So there are ways that you can work full time and then take coursework part time. But the biggest change is there are a lot of online master's programs. Now, one of the interesting things that I want to bring out, you can be admitted to an online program, but the real question becomes, do I even want to finish it? Because if you're admitted to a program, that should allow you to take maybe a course or two at a time. So you don't have to quit a job, you don't have to leave where you are and move to Chicago to go to a full-time program. So there are many opportunities out there. Now, I will warn you about two things. There are some outstanding schools. University of Maryland, Purdue University have major global campuses. So they do a lot of things online. Obviously, those are two outstanding universities. And then you have other schools that hire adjunct faculty and their revenue sources, and they hang a sign up and say, we're offering an online MBA program. And sometimes you have to be really wary of those because are they really quality programs with quality faculty, or is it a quick way for a university to make money on your tuition? So there are part-time programs, there are online programs, and then of course there are full-time programs where you end up quitting a job and going to school. But I want you to be aware that ever since COVID, when so many things went online, more and more universities started offering online graduate programs. So if you go to Southern Cal, if you go to Georgia Tech, if you go to Purdue, University of Maryland, University of Wisconsin, there are some really outstanding schools that offer a number of programs online. So you keep your job, you work full time, and I'm not aware of anybody that says you have to sign a document to say that you're going to finish the program. When the University of Phoenix came out and started advertising a lot of things, I always wanted to get a piece of information they would never share. They talked about how many students they had, but I always wanted to know, okay, how many students do you have, but how many of them actually finish a degree program? So even if you get into a program, I don't think you have to finish it. So if you're an IT professional and you want to do an online program, one of the questions you should ask is, do I have to complete the program, or can I pick and choose and maybe take 3 or 4 classes and then just not continue? So I think that's one of the great opportunities that we've had since COVID, that there are more and more opportunities online that may not mean that you have to actually finish the degree.
Gotcha. For those ones that okay, and I appreciate you naming good ones. And I don't want to ask you to name ones on the other end of the spectrum, but above and beyond what you were just sharing there, uh, um, do you have any insights or advice above and beyond the completion that people watching this can leverage to maybe avoid those pitfalls?
Well, let me give you an example. Once upon a time, I was the associate dean of the University of Kansas Edwards campus in Kansas City. We had 13 graduate programs, and 12 of them were evening programs. So we had people that worked full time that came to our building in the evening and got their MBA, they got a civil engineering degree. We had all sorts of programs. And in the Kansas City area, there were 11 MBA programs. AACSB is the professional organization that accredits MBA programs. 2 of us were accredited and 9 weren't. There was a small liberal arts school about 40 miles outside of Kansas City that came to town, rented space, hired nothing but adjunct faculty, and they had more MBA programs in Kansas City than they had undergraduate students on their liberal arts campus. If you have any questions about anybody, you can always write to me and say, what do you think? But I would look at, the top programs and be wary of, uh, John Brown MBA program that opens up in a mall after hours when the mall closes down. You just have to be careful because there are schools that are so concerned about their finances, they will introduce almost anything to make some quick dollars.
And and you're saying that in that particular example, 9 out of 11 were not accredited?
That's correct. I was embarrassed. But at the same time, the best students knew the 2 of us that were accredited. But not everybody had been a stellar undergraduate student. So
Sure.
they might have applied to the University of Kansas or the University of Missouri Kansas City and didn't get in. So back then their only option was to go to one of the non-accredited programs. And some of them were better than others. But there were some that I would not have encouraged them to ever go there. It was terrible.
Yeah, that's horrible. Because you can really have somebody with righteous intentions and and really wanting to do the right thing and just be I don't know if there's another way to say it other than be taken advantage of. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I reached out to Tom Welke because he's been working with your group, and one of the questions I had for him, and I'm going to bring this up because he responded, exceptionally well. A lot of times, if someone has an undergraduate degree, let's say in IT, computer science, whatever, the question becomes, do I do a master's degree in computer science or IT, or do I do an MBA degree? And, the real question is looking ahead to what you want to do and which degree, if you want to go into management, then an MBA on top of a bachelor's degree may be the way to go.
right.
On the other hand, if you really want more in-depth knowledge in AI, IT, computer science, then doing a master's in computer science may be the way to go.
Yeah, and even through the courses that we have within the academy, when for the former, like you were describing, um, we have a budgeting course and a communications course, and those are designed that if somebody really is looking at, I don't want to say less of a technical role, but wanting to get into more of a leadership role. It's you have to understand business, and you have to take what those technical things that you're learning, but be able to explain them in the language of business. But like you said, if somebody really wants to be more of a technical nature, that might not be as applicable. Um,
Yeah, the other thing I want to interject here, and this may be new to many of you. I had this experience both at Northwestern and the University of Kansas. There is a hybrid degree out there that's called engineering management. Engineering management is a hybrid between engineering and MBA. I do have a bias about MBA programs because most MBA programs bring in a whole lot of people from a whole lot of backgrounds. To be in an engineering management program, you're going to have a background in engineering or maybe another STEM field. But when you do MBA programs, it might be interesting to find out, how specific are they to help someone who has an engineering background rather than a librarian or a hospital administrator who's looking at an MBA program very, very differently. Now, a few years ago, MBA programs for engineering graduates started dropping off. But engineering management is something that individuals may want to look at, which is the hybrid I described.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, and that's just another arrow in the quiver of why it's invaluable for somebody to reach out to you as they're trying to figure out their path in these ways. We do have a question. I did want to thank, let me scroll back up here, Hester for his comment about the COVID, which hopefully we touched on with what you were sharing, Bruce. But Louisa was asking, how do you recommend students position themselves for career growth while in graduate school, particularly in an online program?
That's a great question. I can answer it a little bit differently. Um, Online programs may offer things that go beyond just the coursework. There are some hybrid programs where you actually go to campus and spend some time, hopefully an online program. Um would be willing to have some of the same services for students who are online. Um, if you're on campus, there are opportunities for summer internships. Most universities have career service offices. They have all sorts of student services. But if you're looking at an online program, I would ask, beyond taking courses online, what other things do you provide in the way of career services, counseling services? Um, there are a lot of things that universities want to do to provide more than just the coursework. So you're going to have some that may offer only the coursework, and there may be others that do some really nice things with their online populations.
Question for you. Did you see, so if somebody can have the wherewithal to be asking those questions, and I agree that's a phenomenal question. Uh, would did you can we make a correlation between some of those unaccredited schools that you were describing that might not have those sorts of resources available as well?
It's hard to say.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
if someone has a robust program at a major university, they're more likely to offer extra services. If someone's more concerned about how much money can we make on tuition, they may not offer as much to help a student. Almost every university, if they're worth their weight, should have placement data.
Okay.
So,
Go.
you know, if you say, how many students did you graduate from your MBA program? What's your placement data look like? What are these people doing today? And if they can't give you that data, that's not a very good sign. If they can give you really good data and say, hey, that really makes a lot of sense, you get an MBA from here, and those students have been able to move on. Even some websites, like an engineering management website, may have testimonials from students who are engineers. They did their engineering management program at Northwestern in the evening, and then they explain what they were able to do with that. So, if a school's thinking ahead and they've got good data, they should share it.
Okay.
And
No, that
if they don't have good data, they may not have much to share other than thank you very much for giving us your tuition.
no, thank you. And I think I probably worded it differently, but that's kind of where I was going with it, even with what you were sharing earlier about the University of Phoenix and trying to get some of that info. And it was like, well, let me just change the topic, kind of a thing. So we do have a couple other comments here. Hester had said, and this is going back to the MBA type of stuff. Um, uh, and a lot of work is done overseas, particularly in India. So being able to manage is very important. If there's anything you'd like to add to, I mean, I completely agree with them, Bruce. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that or, um,
Yeah, there's no question that there's a lot of IT work done, and some of you may or may not know about the H-1B visa situation, but now it costs a lot of companies $100,000 to bring someone in on an H-1B visa. In fact, I saw a story that just came out yesterday in national news and didn't quite get a chance to digest it, but certainly there are a number of people that work remotely from a place like India and do work for people here in the United States. So, yeah, there's a lot of that going on, and there was a major story that came out yesterday that I need to go back and read now.
Gotcha. Cool. Hey, and then the next one was from Gary. The problem I saw with my MBA program was that they accepted people directly out of college with no experience. As it turned out, they really had nothing or little to offer during our interactive sessions. For me, I recommend at minimum 3 years of work experience prior to being accepted to an MBA program. For research programs, I see it much more valid to enter grad school just after graduation or concurrently.
Yeah, I can answer that with a great answer.
Please.
I was very familiar with the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern. University of Chicago has the Booth School, two of the top five MBA programs in the country. They will not look at an applicant before they've completed 3 years of full-time work experience. So the very top MBA programs will not bring anybody in unless they have 3 years of work experience. Now, for the programs that want your money as quickly as they can get it, they're going to bring you in without any work experience. I totally agree that an MBA program with people right out of an undergraduate program typically do not have real world experience and are able to share things. On a personal note, I was a little bit later in life working full time at Purdue when I had an opportunity to do a PhD in higher education administration. And I took courses in the evening, and everybody in that program was a working professional. And the discussions we had were very, very rich.
Mm-hmm.
If we had had someone right out of an undergraduate program and something like that, they would not have understood any of the discussions that we had. So back to the MBA thing. One of the things you can always ask, what's the minimum work requirement to be admitted?
Sure.
And the standard for the top programs are 3 years. There are a lot of others that they bring you in whenever you're ready to start without any experience.
Yeah, no, that's great insight. And I know we've gone over time just a few minutes, but we do have a couple more.
That's fine. I've got all the time you need.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. From Hester, career counseling services and networking, strong alumni association are really necessary. Any
Totally
thoughts?
agree. If you're looking at universities, they vary some. Some have a central career services office. We did at Northwestern. But at Northwestern, both the business school, Kellogg School of Management, and the engineering school had separate career offices. So if you're a high school student thinking about going to college, someone said they were on this for a nephew. Find out what the career service offices are. I will tell you that the people that work in a central career services offices do not have an engineering degree. That's just not their backgrounds. They're history majors, they're English majors, and a lot of them just don't want to learn about the STEM fields. So as you're looking at any university, find out what the career services are. Earlier this week, I had a student write to me who just graduated. I won't name the university, but said, I'm looking for a job. I do this about once a week. So I went back to the university website, I got the link, and I said, right on your campus is a career services office. He didn't even know about them, hadn't even worked with them. So here I am, an outsider, telling him to go back to his campus and work with the office that he could have worked with for 4 years. And a lot of those offices start working with students long before they graduate. Once upon a time at Purdue, we called it the placement office. They're not placement offices anymore. They're called career services, and they have programming, all the way through your undergraduate or graduate study. And then, of course, they're going to help connect you with full-time employment once you graduate.
Yeah, and that just becomes part of the offering as much as the body of knowledge and the degree and everything itself that way. Um, uh, Louisa shared, I completed my undergraduate studies in person at UC San Diego, am now in an online graduate program at Cal Poly Pomona. The main challenge I'm facing is networking. excuse me, what strategies do you recommend for building meaningful professional connections in an online environment?
Well, I guess I'd go back to Cal Poly and ask them. And I didn't answer this about Northwestern. Northwestern has a very active alumni association that connects with undergraduate and graduate students. So I would go back to Cal Poly and say, I'm in this online program. What kind of networking can I do with the alumni from Cal Poly? As I mentioned earlier, and I didn't know it was going to explode, but I network a lot with people in LinkedIn. I have 21,000 followers in LinkedIn, and I'm amazed at the connections that I make in LinkedIn. And I connect prospective students. In fact, I had a student from the University of Iowa the other day who's doing a summer internship at Pratt Whitney in Connecticut, and he's trying to decide between master's and PhD. And I said, you need to contact Paul Jones. Paul Jones got a job offer from Pratt Whitney. He also had a job offer from the Institute for Defense Analysis in Washington, D.C. And I said, contact him because he can be a great resource for you to learn about why he did a PhD as opposed to a master's. So just earlier this week, the young man from Iowa said, I can't thank you enough. I just finished a great telephone conversation with Paul Jones at the Institute for Defense Analysis. Paul Jones did his undergraduate degree in mechanical from Michigan, came to Northwestern, did his PhD, I'm sorry, aerospace at Michigan, and he did his PhD in mechanical engineering. And he works at the Institute for Defense Analysis. But I keep in touch with Paul, and he's in LinkedIn. So I would reach out to LinkedIn. I have learned not very well, but you can do a lot of searches in LinkedIn and maybe find people with your background with Cal Poly or whatever. Um, and I don't know whether UC San Diego might even be willing to help you network with UC San Diego graduates. But I would reach out to Cal Poly and find out if they got anything set up.
No, thank you. Thank you. That's great advice. And then Hester had followed that up with professional organizations are important as well. And I can totally attest to that because in my opportunity to serve in leadership for the ISACA San Diego chapter, we're huge about that. And you will meet other professionals, the opportunity for networking. Um, we actually had the gentleman that presented last week really just talked about his career and how his career kind of ran its course. He just retired for the second time. But we were talking about how, you will be again, drink the Isaka um, Kool-Aid, but there are a lot of excellent organizations out there that you can connect with, and those can open up doors to mentorship as
Yep.
well. So if you've got specific things that you're trying to learn from and everything, and then Ryan had said that, yeah, actually, Ryan's comment was that he sent Louisa a connection on LinkedIn. And yeah, I consider Ryan a friend. And Ryan is someone that I met through the LinkedIn chapter. So it's really kind of neat to see it come full circle in those ways. So that does get us through what we had in the chat and everything. So I would ask you, Bruce, if you just have any other closing comments for everybody. But before you say that, dude, just a warm, sincere note of appreciation for you being here, giving your time, and sharing so much of the knowledge that you have. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'll end with two or three things. First of all, you can never plan too early. Sometimes a student connects and says, I'm only a sophomore at Purdue. And I'll say, hey, when you were a high school student in the eighth or ninth grade, you decided to plan out your high school curriculum and then go to college. You didn't fall out of bed as a senior in high school and say, I think I'll go to college next year. Planning for graduate school is no different. So undergraduate students need to plan early. If you're a working professional, there are ways you can start inquiring and planning. One of my big concerns is students wait till the fall of their senior year in college and then they think they can do everything while they're a senior. Uh, Applying for graduate student status, if you do it the right way, it's hard work. I mean, you just don't say, hey, I think I'll apply to MIT, and then you apply. And I just find too many students don't put in the hard work they should do to be a successful applicant. When I met the young lady from Grinnell, I told Joyce, I said, Joyce, I'm designating you as a superstar.
Okay.
And she said, you really think I'm going to get in? I said, Joyce, you're going to get in every place. So just yesterday, I read her announcement, but I've Zoomed with Joyce. I presented at Grinnell virtually to the Girls Who Code group. Uh, but here's a young lady, research for 4 years, summer programs, and she had a choice at two mediocre schools. She either was going to go to Carnegie Mellon or Stanford. And I think she got into at least 7 PhD programs. But Joyce had done things really well for a long time. So by the time she came to me, I could anoint her as a superstar. And here she was. So her post this week said, I've decided I'm going to go to Stanford. But she worked hard. When
Yeah.
someone writes to me in the fall and say, can you help me with PhD applications? I have no idea where they are. So, you plan ahead, you work hard at it. Anything in life, it's going to make you more successful in the end.
Yeah, yeah, it's just a life lesson, and we were touching on it earlier, just from something else that you had said that hit me that way that, if the better you have a plan, the better you can have a strategy in support of that plan. So,
Well, and again, I'm available. So many times I have to correct bad information. A student asks a student asks a faculty member. Well, 30 years ago when I did my PhD, it was like this. I am current. I read things every day. And I am more than happy to help anybody in any way that I can, whether it's a nephew or you, a spouse, or whatever. So the starting point is connect in LinkedIn, and I'm always available either through LinkedIn or through email. And I'll look forward to working with many of you. And Dave, thank you very much for including me. I look forward to uh, working with your group.
yeah, I think just to share with everybody that's still online, um, we had Tom Welke as the recruiter as a guest in February. We knew had the opportunity with you, Bruce, this month. And what we're really starting to kind of talk about behind the scenes is how we can leverage both of your guys just invaluable, not only your expertise, but your passion to help and play it forward is something very I that's the magic in all of this. We can take your passion and your knowledge. the knowledge I try to bring to the table, my passion to try and help play it forward through future generations and the community at large is same as with Tom, and the synergistic effect of all of that is where the magic happens. So we'll definitely be keeping in touch, and I look forward to it, and I appreciate you. We do have one last thing.
Okay.
Sorry, somebody just Esther. Thank you very much, Bruce. You have provided a lot of good information. I wish I had known you when our daughter was in ninth grade and heading down the path of college application. I just sent you a request to connect on LinkedIn, but hit send before I could include a message. So,
Well, one last thing that we're talking now.
yeah, please.
I worked for the college board for 5 years. The college board did the PSAT, the SAT, and advanced placement. One of the points I want to make is if you've got a high school student, tell them to take the strongest curriculum they can. Don't worry about the grade point average. Don't worry about being the class valedictorian. Take the AP coursework, take the toughest courses, because that's going to get you better prepared than saying, hey, I was valedictorian, but I skipped AP calculus. I didn't take AP chemistry because I heard those were hard courses. So the challenge for high school students, especially today, is don't take easy routes. Take the strongest curriculum you can have. And if you don't get into MIT, don't worry about it. Wherever you go to school, make the most of it, but make your academic record in high school the strongest preparation you can have.
I can only attest to that because this is the year that my son's a graduating high school, and he followed before you and I even met, but he followed that edict and he started taking the AP classes as a junior, continued as a senior, and I know that contributed to his acceptance into SDSU, which was his first his plan A for the school that he wanted to go to. He wasn't interested in traveling or leaving the state or anything like that, and he got accepted. So
Yep.
we're very proud of him. We're very appreciative of um, the environment, but everything you have said about planning, looking ahead, challenging yourself, are all of those things are an investment in yourself as you play it forward. So cool. Well, dude, appreciate you. Appreciate everybody sticking around as long as you had. I love when these conversations go over because it just means that it's resonating with more people. So I'll let you go and say thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
I enjoyed this immensely. Bye now.
likewise.